And so this morning we're going to start off with Ian Jarvis. You know, we go to architecture school and we learn all that stuff about design and aesthetics and all that jazz, but rarely do we really understand or get much education around leadership, business management, all that kind of stuff that you end up doing when you're a principal running a firm. Right, Mike? So Ian comes from that business world, and he's going to talk to us about leadership skills and what we can do better to lead our clients, our teams, and lead the creation of a better built environment for the communities we all serve. Ian.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Good morning. So the seductive title is Work Like a Creative, Lead Like a CEO. Just to get my terms straight, when I use the term CEO today, I'm talking about anyone in a leadership position. I needed to pick a word, it's CEO, but you know, if you're a founder, if you're a manager, general manager, a president, if you are running part of your organization and 4 people report to you, for today's purposes, you're a CEO. And that's partially because I believe in any event, we're all CEOs for our lives, for our careers, for our projects. So what we're going to talk about today is how you merge these seemingly disparate ideas about the creativity you need inside your company. And particularly in your industry, which is extremely complex. How do you impose the business structure and the financial goals so that they merge with the creative, support it, and the better you do that, the better they support each other, the more money you'll drive to your company, the more clients you'll have, the better things will be all around. So in order to set today up, I'm going to propose to you that I'm going to deliver 4 deliverables. We're going to talk about breaking habitual behaviors. We all have them, and I am a habit buster by trade. We'll talk about leadership profiles, some ideas about what leadership is. I'm going to provoke the counterintuitive idea that your product may not be what you sell. And then we'll talk about a few ways that you might, if you buy into this, what you might want to do or what you might want to take on as a small iterative step to begin the transformation for yourself and for the people around you. So just one word about me. It takes longer than one word, but I was born with the character trait of great curiosity. And it extends itself very much into understanding, wanting to understand, being incapable of not trying to understand how things work. So when I was 8 years old and I got a fishing reel, and I don't know if any of you fish, but there's this beautiful mechanism that does all kinds of things at the same time. It really works great. So the first thing I did was I took it apart. And I got it back together again. And I was fascinated by that. And I can still see in my eye what I found that day. When I was 17 and I got my driver's license and they pointed to the pedal on the floor, that big one on the left, and said, well, when you push hard on that, the car will stop. And I was okay, but I actually wound up having to take a brake system apart because I couldn't do it without getting in there and understanding how it worked. And the same thing happened when I got into corporate. So I was 32 when I got my first real job because I'd been banging around Europe on a whole other journey. And I got hired as a sales guy. But I spent all my time beyond the sales, which I was very successful at, trying to look at what people were doing in my company. What did I see that people were doing right? What was management doing that was right? What was management doing that was wrong? What could I assess? Because in the course of this process and where I went from entry-level sales guy to president and then a CEO, it was about a 5 or 6 year journey. In that time, I started to assemble what I thought were great attributes of leadership, great attributes of a company that was well run. Because there's plenty of examples of them that they're not well run, so I have plenty to look at. That's that time period I spent doing that. All of you, well, let me tell you what I think I know about you. Most of you spent that same period, at entry level through to some acquisition of placement and power, learning something else. You were learning your trade. You were learning to be architects. If you're a supplier, you were learning about wood, or you were learning about plastic, you were learning plaster paint. But you were acquiring the skills around that talent. And what happened was, as was mentioned in the opening remarks, you probably didn't have the time to understand or learn how to run a business. So it kind of happened to you. And that's the problem. But there's good news. The good news is, a company isn't defined by the fact that it has a problem. A company is defined by how it solves this problem. And that goes for every one of you, because you all have problems to solve in your business. The question is, not that you have problems. That's your daily bread. The question is, how do you solve them? Or do you choose to solve them? Or are you one of those people who just ignores it? How you solve the problem defines your company. How you solve the problem defines you. You know, when in World War II, after World War II, there were a lot of studies, because there was a lot to study. One of the things they studied were the people in London who were in the Blitz. And for those of you who don't know what the Blitz was, it was the Nazi Germany decided that it would win the Battle of Britain in 1940 or 40 by bombing London to rubble. And they bombed every night for months. And what this study found was that ordinary people, Londoners, who the day before the bombings would have been really angry about the milk being delivered late, were 3 weeks later stepping past burned out buildings, unexploded bombs, and bodies as if they had been doing it all their lives. That's the human dynamic. We all are part of that dynamic. How do we solve our problems is part of that dynamic. Because what we tend to do is, if we find ourselves in a situation that we think we can't fix, we normalize it. We tell ourselves this is the way it is. Or we tell ourselves, I can't make it any better. That's a habit. And it's not a great habit. So I come in and I bust that habit, because I'm going to say to you, as a leader, that's not what you can establish. That's not the goal you can establish in your company or in your group. So let's just for a minute define a habit. Something you do often and regularly, sometimes without knowing that you were doing it, settled or regular tendency, especially one that is hard to give up. We all have habits, and most of us have that habit. So what does that lead to? When I ran my last company out on the West Coast, my partner was on the East Coast, and we were in the cosmetics industry. We were manufacturing injection molding. So we made compacts and lipstick cases for Lauder and MAC and L'Oreal. It was a $120 million company. And I pulled a $12 million order from Neutrogena to launch their first foray ever into color. So we did compacts and lipstick cases. Three deliveries in, 350,000 lipstick cases were rejected, because the mechanism, the thing that you twist at the bottom, was really funky. It clattered. And I saw a great marketing opportunity. I had a factory in Indonesia. I knew they were going to be great. But there was a marketing opportunity, because for Neutrogena it was a crisis. So I went to Neutrogena and I said, I understand, I'm going to take care of it. I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow and I'm not coming back till I fix it. And I knew it was going to be fixed in 3 or 4 days, but they didn't. So I pulled my marketing off over there. I got on a plane, I went to Indonesia. I arrived in Indonesia, and the guy named Tan, who ran our factory, 3,000 people, 700 injection molding machines. He meets me at the airport in Jakarta. We move over to the domestic flight to go to Semarang, where the factory was. That plane takes off. The first thing he does, as soon as he hits the air, is he pulls out 6 lipstick cases, 3 of the old ones, 3 new ones, and starts to tell me in great detail what went wrong, what shift it went wrong on, what tool was, and I went like this. Stop. I said, Tan, I'm going to get off this airplane. I'm going to walk in a room with 12 of your best engineers. They're going to tell me all this and more. We're going to settle on what we're going to fix, when we're going to fix it, how much you're going to pay to air freight it, and I'll go back and I'll be a hero at Neutrogena. I'm not here in this plane where you're not having text, phone calls, or any message of any kind to hear about this. That's not your job. Your job is to tell me where this company is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. Your job is to tell me what machinery you're building and designing that's going to make my parts more competitive and more interesting. Your job is to tell me what my competitor's doing. Your job is to tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what you need me to do to make your life better. To his credit, that's what we got done. And he called my partner a week later. And he said, I want you to know, Ian changed my working life. I know what I have to do. I know what my job is. What was he doing, and what are you at risk for doing? Micromanaging. Someone in this room is a micromanager. Someone in this room works with people who are micromanagers. When you habitually micromanage, you aren't teaching people to think for themselves. You are teaching people to wait for you to do their thinking for them. And if all issues run through you, it inflates your own value. And it undervalues your people's contributions. And if you're into leadership, that's the worst thing you want to do. Not just for them, but for yourself, and I'll explain why. Here's how we get into micromanaging. Here's one of the ways. I mean, I have an hour, so there's a lot that's not going to get said, but let me point to one thing that happens in micromanaging. That's not it. There it is. These are classic management structures. Most of you know what they are, and they certainly know the shape of a pyramid and a circle. The classic management structure in your companies, which are bigger, the bigger companies, you probably run in some form in this way. And you all know what this is. It's people reporting to managers who report to other people who manage. And they drive information upward and upward into the CEO. And that does something important. It gets the CEO out of the business of running their own company day to day. There's another reason for that separation. That's why I have a separation there. It works. Now, if you're in this situation or in this structure, you know where it doesn't work. You know that there are silos. Things go wrong. There are problems too. But by and large, this is all we've got. Our job, again, is to make it work better. Over here is a circle. I call it the wagon wheel. Now, where is our CEO on this wagon wheel? And CEO, remember, any one of you who's leading anybody is my CEO today. This wagon wheel, everyone else is outside, and those spokes are all the people that you have reporting to you and that you make report to you for everything they do. This is when you're micromanaging. When you're micromanaging, you're in the hub of the wagon wheel. And when you're doing that, the bigger your company gets, the more you do of this, the more of a constraint, the more of a straitjacket this is to your company's growth, to your growth as a leader, and to your people's growth. It sucks leadership out of you when you micromanage. And it's a habit. And it may be hard to give up. So how can you break out of it? Let me put an idea across. Let's talk about the fabulous you. Because every one of you do things that are fabulous. I put a couple of them up here. They may not be the things you do, but you know things that you do as well or better than anyone in your company. The fabulous you. Maybe it's design, maybe it's client relations, acquisition, sales, vendor selection, execution on the process. Maybe as leader of your company, you're the face of the company. Photographs are taken of you at meetings. You go out, people talk about you. It's your name. Now, adding something else to fabulous you that you must acquire if you don't have it, you have to have a vision. Even if you're managing 4 people, what's your vision for those 4 people? If you're managing a company, when I talk to Tan, what's your vision? Where's this company going to be? How much time do you have? How much time do you get to have a vision, to see the future, to advance careers of the people around you, to be seen to be advancing careers? Because trust me, they will walk through walls for you if they think that you get up every day to advance their careers, which is something I was totally committed to in my company. Every company I ran, people knew that I got up every day trying to make their careers advance. How much time do you have to think about installing a coherent strategy and culture? If you're micromanaging, you probably don't have a lot of that time. If you're at a CEO level, or if you're separating yourself from the daily business, I know you're saying to yourself, I can't do it. But then you'll have time to do all of these kinds of things that make you the fabulous you. The cost of micromanaging your company is enormous. I could show you, if I had time, what 40 minutes a day of micromanaging does to the outcome of your firm way at the end of the process. It is hundreds of thousands, and it can be millions of dollars if you multiply out 40 minutes a day by every week, by every month, by a year. Because when you micromanage, you suck your own time out of what you're doing well to do something you don't do well or don't need to do, and you suck the time from your people. They're in the same position. They have things that they do fabulously well, and you're not letting them get on with it. I have an exercise, which maybe some of you will do, about Fabulous You. One day, when you get back to an office and you have a few minutes, get a piece of paper and draw a line on it. Not a big deal. $1,000, $10. And that $1,000 figure may be wrong. You may be, when you're doing Fabulous You work, it may be $10,000. You can put a number on it. The question is, during the day that you do your job, how many hours are you spending doing $1,000 Fabulous You jobs, and how much time are you spending doing $10 jobs? Add those minutes up. Add those hours up. And if I sell what I'm selling, you'll say to yourself, I have to get out of the business of $10 jobs. I have to be in the business of $1,000 jobs. And every one of you is a CEO. Every one of you has $1,000 an hour work that you should and could be doing. Okay, let's say you want to make that change. Let's say this is of interest to you. Let's say you're not sitting there going, I can't change it. He's out of his mind. I don't have the time. Let's say you're thinking, maybe I can find the time. I'm with you. Change is hard. After living with dysfunctional behavior for so many years, people become invested in defending their dysfunctions rather than changing them. I can't change it. It's too hard. People overestimate the value of what they have. And they underestimate, they don't see the value of what they're going to get again by gain by giving it up. Because what you say to yourself is, yeah, but man, if I have to teach people to do this, it's going to take more time. Yeah, it's going to take more time for a short period of time. But in the grand scheme of things, as you pass that work off, as you're doing the job you were born to do, the job you love to do, or the job you have to do and should be doing, that curve starts to go straight up because those people start to function independently. So the time you invest in this is just short-term thinking, and it's short-term time. You're there longer than 6 months. The time it takes to train people to work independent of you and report to you in that way with finished product is a short investment in your future, in your career. People fear losing control. Done right, you get more control. Done right, you're seen as their leader, not their boss. Done right, they will come to you for more. They will ask for more. They will stick by you. People will offer them jobs and they'll go, no, my career is being built here. I love this man or this woman. They get up they feel it. They get up every day to work for me. They're making my world. They're teaching me how to be a leader. That's what you get to do in your leadership. Where could you put this to work? I'm going to push my luck. Let's start with the characteristics of what you want to be if you're going to put this to work. I went to Inc. magazine. This was when I first made this presentation. Then they had 10 things that a great leader does. But we don't have time for that, and these first two are terribly important. Leader must have the ability to learn from past experiences, or it will happen again. Right? And we all know the definition of insanity. Do the thing again and again and again, expect a different result. It's not true. You have to learn. You have to have the humility to look at what went wrong. For example, if CEO didn't have an effective crisis management system in place when a situation arose, he or she should learn what they need for future reference and be able to build a plan for that. And we're going to come back to that. Strong communication skills. How do you speak to your people? Every word in the English language has a temperature, a very specific temperature. The language you use to talk to people informs who you are and what your relationship is with them. And once again, if we had time, I'd get into it. But look, when I work with executives all the time in firms, and when I start to work with an executive, in the course of the conversation, I'm going to slip this in like it was nothing. I'm going to say, oh, and by the way, at random, send me 10 emails that you've sent out in the last month. I don't care what they're about. When I get those emails, I know what I'm dealing with because I'm looking at their language. And understand this, emails and texts are bombs. The speed with which emails and texts elevate to confrontation is phenomenal because all you're doing is you hit the send button, powerful, and you're not there. When people have conversations, that escalation is a much slower process, a much more nuanced process, and people pick their words much more carefully. Look at your emails. Just as a general rule, if you want to try to fix them, look at this. Take a look at your emails and try to rewrite it, taking out every you and every I. I expected you to do this. You said you would. I insist on. If you have to rewrite that same email without using those words, you have to get into more neutral language. Just think about it. This is all take home. That's your communication skills. Top executives consistently transparent and balanced in their communication. Balanced. Because balance opens people up. Accusation doesn't do anything for you. They translate their view of potential and challenges as well as expectations. Expectations are incredibly important. Your people want to come to work every day and know what's expected of them. Not just for today. They want to know what this trajectory is. They want to know what this line is. Where are they going? Where do you want them to go? What are you doing to support them? What do they need to do to support that? Again, you're getting out of working in the present tense because you're making the time to do so. Great leaders devote time to creating connections inside and outside the company. It's language, it's intention, it's vision. Leadership is, these are bromides, but they're true. Leadership's creating, articulating a vision, inspiring others to want to work toward that vision. Bosses boss, leaders lead. The greatest leader is not necessarily, these are quotes from some pretty cool people, but it's who had the time. The greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He or she is the one that gets their people to do the greatest things. Management, on the other hand, is the oversight of the tactical steps required to complete the work needed to achieve that vision. Do not misunderstand what I'm saying. Management is an incredible skill. And many of you in this room use it all the time. But being a great manager is not going to make you the CEO of your company. I do not denigrate management at all. It is fundamental. And if you're a leader and you don't know how to manage, you better hire somebody like that. When I hired a COO once for a company, and one of the people came to me and said, "Why'd you hire Michael? I don't really like him." I said, "Let me explain something to you. See this? This is me. This is what I do great. This is what I do great. This is what I suck at. This is what I'm great at. This is what I suck at. See this? This is Michael's profile. This is what he's great at. This is what he sucks at. This is what he's great at. This is what he doesn't do well. Watch what happens when we work together." Okay? You pick people, you manage people so that they fill in the blanks, so that you create a tapestry of good work. Leadership is about taking responsibility, not making excuses. Again, that's that humility. Now, you don't have to take responsibility to your people. You don't have to say, "Mea culpa, I screwed it up." You can, in certain circumstances, but you just got to say it to yourself. Because if you're not saying it to yourself, then you're not going to solve the problem. If you're not solving the problem, you're into the version of insanity. You don't lead by hitting people over the head. That's assault, not leadership. That quote comes from Dwight Eisenhower, who was not only president of the United States, he led the war in Europe. And he said that. You don't lead by hitting people over the head. That's assault, not leadership. The function of leadership is to produce more leaders. If you do that, you are doing great work. And you're going to have great results. How do you do it? I'm writing a book called Living with Your Lights On. I have some copies, not of the book, but parts of the book in the back, which is unopened, but will be available. It's just, you can take it. It also has some of the slides here. It might serve as reference points for some of what we're talking about. But some of the things I talk about in the book, and they're in this little folder I'm giving out. The information we need to make great decisions in front of us all times. It's never a surprise unless you don't see what's there. In 2007, I sold all my properties in 4 states, and I told everyone I knew, get into cash. The housing market, the gold rush is about to collapse. And no one listened to me. But in retrospect, you look back and go, yeah, it was obvious. It was a bubble. It was. It was obvious to me. It was obvious to a couple dozen people across America, but the vast number of people didn't want to see it. The information was there, and they didn't want to see it. Are you looking? Are you listening? Are you seeing? My clients, I get into their personal life sometimes, and someone will call me a man or a woman and go, I'm breaking up with so-and-so. I've been with them 3 years. They're a jerk. They're an idiot. I'm going to say, you know what? They were the same jerk 3 years ago. You just didn't want to know it. Do not be the first to know and the last to find out. The successful hunter knows the habits of their prey. There's a hunter, the hunter's metaphor, we're all on the hunt. We're all on the hunt for success, for love, for money, for a new car. You're all hunting. The successful hunter doesn't charge into the forest. The successful hunter knows the habits of his prey, understands where they're going to be, and comes in quietly, blends in, and waits, because your prey will come to you. Do you have the time to understand that idea and put it into action? You'll be far more successful at what you want to accomplish. This gets interesting. I'm sure you've read it already, but I'll repeat it. The 2 most powerful words in the English language and the 2 most limiting words are the same words. What if? There's 2 ways to look at those words. You can look at what we're talking about today and go, what if I fail? What if they don't like it? What if somebody complains? Or you can look at everything you're doing, and you can pick your spots and go, what if I'm successful? What if I pull this off? What if, or what if? If you go negative on what if, and you all know you've done it, we've all done it, you are giving yourself permission to stay in your wagon wheel. You're giving yourself permission to not change. If you want to make changes, give yourself permission to explore making those changes. Think about, what if I'm successful? Delegate, delegate, delegate. The whole key here is to delegate, to get out of doing the jobs that you shouldn't be doing. That's a hard thing to do. Because again, you're in this position where you're going, oh yeah, but then I have to teach them how to do the work and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. They are so ready to do this work. You have people working for you who are so unhappy with the work they're doing. They're unhappy with you. They don't tell you, they tell everyone else. Because you're constricting their growth. Delegate, delegate, delegate. That is a huge operational feature of acquiring the skill set. The best executive is the one who has sense enough to pick great people, do what he wants to get done, and self-restraint to keep from meddling with them while they do it. People who you hire are better than you. There's nothing I love more than walking into a room full of smart people, because then I don't have a lot of work to do. I just kind of keep it controlled and keep it going in the right direction. But the ideas are pouring out. Hire smart people. Let them get on with it. Look for people who will aim for the remarkable, who will not settle for the routine. They can't all be these people, but how many of them do you have? How many of them are around you? How many could you go out and hire one? One smart person. If you pick the right people and give them the opportunity to spread their wings and put compensation as a carry behind it, you almost don't have to manage them. That's Jack Welch, C-O-G-E, which is a company that did very well with him. He understood leadership. How to delegate. Find really smart people, progressively give them responsibilities. Doesn't look like I spelled it wrong. Oh, I did, yeah. Pay them every dollar you can and give them, this is the key, guys. You cannot give people responsibility without giving them the power to execute that responsibility. If you give someone a job and say to them, oh yeah, and before you do anything, come and see me, you're back in the wagon wheel. You've got to figure it out. You've got to give it up. And you cannot do this without giving people the power to execute their responsibilities. It's a critical path to being successful at this. What's the definition of a crisis? Unforeseen situation which you and your staff may suffer from confusion, friction, pressure, and stress. Anybody know this? Never happened to any of you, right? It may be difficult or impossible to carry out your usual daily activities. Oh, there may be a lack of clear information about what is happening. That defines a crisis. How many of those happen to you in a day or a week or a month? How much of your life revolves around the crisis and this confusion? Because this costs you money. It radiates out in so many ways. It radiates back to your supplier. It radiates to all your people in the company in terms of what they're doing. Now, they're not doing their $1,000 an hour jobs. Your supplier just called to say, well, you know, now that I do that thing twice, I got to redo it. That other job you have over here, that's back by 3 weeks. Money, 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 money. And it radiates out to your client too. And I will talk about that in a minute. So, tell you a story. When I got my first job I worked for a French company, Saint-Gobain. I got hired because they were at the bottom of the barrel, because I had no background, but I spoke French, and I lived in Paris, and I understood the French mentality. So they hired me on a wing and a prayer. The CEO didn't hire me. I will tell you, a really smart guy hired me. And I went to New York City to launch this brand new product for them. Not a product, that was their product for 300 years. They made fragrance bottles for the cosmetics industry, for the fragrance industry. And the CEO thought I would fail. He was sure I would fail. I killed it. I knocked it out of the park. And I did it by ignoring them. I said to them, my job is to make you go away. My job is to make you disappear. My clients have to get up every day and think that the power of this company rests right in my office. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. That's what they have to think. Because they will never deal with the French. Because if you want to talk about a wagon wheel mentality, it's extraordinary in France. And it's not at the executive level. The interesting thing is that the wagon wheel mentality in France revolves around the factory. In America, corporate tells the factory what it's going to produce. In France, the factory tells corporate what it can produce. And corporate has to go out and live with that result. I would set prices. I would set delivery dates, and I'd shove it down their throat. And I was throwing so much money into this company, they couldn't resist. They couldn't say no. Because I was breaking them out in the United States of America. 9 months into the job, I called up the CEO, who at this point was telling everybody how he hired me. And I said I wanted a meeting with him and the top 4 people in the company. I got my meeting. I flew to Paris. I drove out to La Défense. I walked into a conference room. The 4 guys are there, including the guy who ran the factory. And we made small talk for 5 minutes, and the president, the CEO said, Jan, it's your meeting. So, if I got this right, this is what I drew. It's why I'm not a designer, incidentally. And I said to these guys, see that cloud in the center there? That's our factory. Those arrows, those are problems that come into this factory every day. Huge factory. Problems literally came in every day. And I said, because the factory doesn't have a problem-solving mentality. It doesn't have a problem-solving culture. Because the factory is, the French word is brouillard, it's a fog. I said, because the factory is a fog, the problems don't get solved. And when problems don't get solved, they do what problems always do. They bang around and they get bigger, and they get worse. And when they get big enough, gentlemen, we label them a crisis, they go up the ladder, and they wind up at one of your offices, and you solve the crisis. And that makes you all experts in crisis management, which is the worst thing you should be accused of. The CEO stared at me for what seemed like a very long time. And then he said, Jan is right. To his credit, within 18 months, they had established a culture of problem solving in that company. I had been part of it because I was interviewing people who had this, first of all, speak English, and who understood the word alacrity, who understood that we didn't have 3 weeks to get an answer. We had 3 days at the most. And as that factory got better and better, my operations as sales just got huge. And what happened in the end, I got headhunted, et cetera, because now, my weird history was part of my charm. About 8 years later, Saint-Gobain did something a fragrance glass company has not done in 100 years. They invested hundreds of millions of dollars and built a brand new glass factory in Atlanta, Georgia, to serve the American market, which they dominated, because they learned to solve problems, because they made that the culture of the company. And what I'm saying here is, here's a place to plant your feet. Here's a place to go for it. Being constantly the hub of a network of potential interruptions provides the excitement and the importance. It's this self-importance. I solved the problem. I solved the crisis. Man, that was going wrong. I'm great. Provides the excitement and the importance of crisis management, the false sense of urgency in multi-interrupt processing. Here you are again, doing $10 an hour jobs that you shouldn't be doing. Good governance is not firefighting or crisis management. Instead of opting for ad hoc solutions, and you all live in this world, right? You live day to day solving these problems because they're just about to be or they are a crisis. The need of the hour is to tackle the root cause of the problems. Where do you want to land? Where might you land? I'm going to push my luck here. I'm going to tell you that the buildings that you're building and creating, it's not the only thing you sell. Think about it this way. Here's your building. There comes a day, and I'm going to use this as metaphorically, when you hand over the key. Now, I know they've seen it in process, et cetera, but let's call it that day, the last day. The last thing that happens is you turn over the key. All the way over here is the day you sign the contract. This timeline here is 6, 12, 18, 24 months, and maybe even longer. This is your product development time, right? And you think, here's my product. It's the building. I am telling you that your product and what you sell is the execution of this timeline. What does this timeline look like to your client? I'm going to exaggerate, but I'm going to make my point. In all likelihood, the timeline, which I'm drawing like this, looks like this to your client. Because things break down, because communication isn't strong, because in this timeline, you're not coherent. You think you are, but look at it over 18 months and see how many things go wrong. For some of you, it's a few things. For some of you, it's a lot of things. But if you want to plant your feet in leadership, and remember, leadership is how you get to be a CEO. Management is how you can make a lot of money and be a really strong character in your company. But if you want to exercise leadership, you get to look at this timeline and say to yourselves, I want to smooth it out. And I don't care if it's actually like this. Whatever it is, as a leader, you're saying, I like it, guys. You're doing great. That's not enough. I want more. I want to be able to sell our timeline, because if you sell your timeline as straight, and if you deliver it as straight, a lot of great things happen. First of all, your people aren't doing $10 jobs. They have the time to go out and do more design. They have the time to create more clients. They have the time to build your company rather than save it. Your supplier falls in love with you because they're getting better information. They're getting to do their job once, not twice. And here's a really good, useful element too. You get to control your client. Because when the client sees all this, whether it's true or not, the client gets permission to complain. The client gets permission to get involved. The client gets permission to question everything you do. How much time does that take? How much money goes out the door dealing with an unruly client? If you're selling excellence along the line, you're selling confidence. If you're selling confidence, you control your client. Because they're going to roll over. They're going to go, this guy's doing a great job. Yeah, I believe you. Everything you've told me has been right. So if you're a leader or you're interested in being a leader and you want to plant your feet, one of these places is to look at this timeline and get up and tell people you want to make it better. Money will drive itself in your company. The client will drive more clients into your company during that 18-month period instead of having a wait-and-see attitude. I'm just not sure how they're doing. Your people will drive more money to your company, and your suppliers will be better for you. Here's the new rule, if you're going to take it on. Fix it as a problem, or you will fix it as a crisis. You all know that's true. Why would you let it occur? What does it take to see a problem? Some of you have been in this business 10, 20, 30 years. I believe that if you had the time to look at it, you'd actually get in front of the actual problem itself. You would know supplier X or the situation with your with the client. You would smell the problem before it even happened. You can get that good. You are that good. You just don't have the time and you don't have the focus to lock down on problems and say to your people, I want to have a zero crisis company. Does it mean you'll get there? That's not the point. The point is setting the goal. And the point is setting the structure and the culture and the language of that goal. Because your people will get behind you. Your people will come on board. Fix it as a problem or you'll fix it as a crisis. If there's anything you take away, remember this. Maybe you'll do this too. Maybe you'll find someone in your company who loves to fix problems. Maybe you'll find an Ian Jarvis, someone who's fascinated by this. And maybe as a first step, you'll give that person one goal: no more crisis management. You'll pay them what you can. Pay them, you'll get so much back. It doesn't matter. It's peanuts. And you will do this. This is critical path again. You cannot give them responsibility without the power to execute it. You have to hand it off. Your door's open. They trust you. It's collaborative. As they get their skill sets together, they'll withdraw more and more. And this is what happens to my clients. My clients go through a period of time where they actually go, what would Ian do? And I know I'm halfway through the process. Because they're going to get to a point where they're not going to think, what would Ian do? They're going to get to a point where they're doing it. And that's what you want to do. That's the open door policy. That's this investment you make that spins out so that you have a great control over your company, your people, and you can see where your future's going and you're in control of it. Wait till you see what they come back and want to do. What would I do if I was in your company? I'd probably come into you and say, you know what? I want to start on the supply side. Because we're running 7 projects, we've got 5 people running those projects, and they're running the projects directly with the suppliers. So suppliers are dealing with 5 different characters, 5 different cultures, 5 different attitudes, 5 different sources of information. I want all that information to flow to me. And I want to pick one supplier, just one, and let's spend 6 months getting this together. Let's spend 6 months with me figuring out how to make this supplier run better and how to make our internal operations run toward this supplier better. That will be the beginning of your leadership skills. That will be the beginning of you establishing leadership in the company. Richard Branson, if you want to grow beyond entrepreneur, you've got to learn to delegate. If you want to do a few small things right, do them yourself. If you want to do great things and make a big impact, you have to learn to delegate. This is Ian Jarvis. Delegate. Enjoy the fruits of other people's labor. A great leader spreads credit like butter. My last card. If you solve problems before they become crises, if you distribute power and give it to the right people, if you make your team believe you are building their careers as well as yours, you will drive your business and your life with grace and success. You will deliver more money and vastly more satisfaction to your team, to yourself, and a significantly expanding group of clients. I wrote that. I mean every word of it. Thank you.